we're all familiar with the story of Robin Hood, how he stole from the rich and gave to the poor. Most people think this is an example of wealth redistribution. The rich made a lot of money, the poor didn't have any. Let's give them some. But what most people don't realize is that Robin Hood was stealing back the unfair taxes that the rich had levied on the poor and giving them back. Unfortunately, today our government is playing reverse Robin Hood. And through taxes and fees, they're taking from the poor and giving to the rich, who happen to be themselves. Today I'm going to show you some of the ways your money is used by our government. And hopefully you see that through frivolous spending and selfish spending, that our country's in a downward spiral that only you can pull us out of. Now you may ask yourself, what qualifications do you have to tell me how the government should spend their money? I myself am a married father of 3 who supports our family on $25,000 a year. That's $5,000 a year per person. Through budgeting and thrifty spending, we've purchased a house, we have a car, and we have enough money to live on. Unfortunately, our government doesn't realize that most Americans live this way. They seem to think that as long as we are there for a handout, we're doing okay. But let's backtrack a little bit and see, how does the government get their money? The U.S. government gets most of their money from income tax. Now, we're all familiar with income tax. That's the part of our paycheck that the government keeps for its own use. Another part is levies and tariffs put on import and export. That's goods that come into the country and goods that go out. Before the income tax was established, this was the major source of the government's funding. Our state government is very similar, but they tend to levy property taxes, state fees like registration, vehicle inspection fees, things like that. Local governments do the same thing. So now we know where all our government money comes from, but what do they do with it? This is a chart showing the trend in spending from 2008 to 2013. As you can see, in 2008, it totaled roughly $3 trillion. By 2013, it was almost $4 trillion. Now you say, oh, the government might be spending that on things that are good for us, for our welfare, which is their job according to the Constitution. Let me tell you a few things that the government spends money on. In 2010, the Veterans Association spent $34 million on unused buildings. That's buildings that are vacant, while there are hundreds of homeless vets out on the street. The city of Las Vegas received $5.2 million in federal grants in 2010 to build the Neon Boneyard Park and Museum. That's a museum to show the old neon signs that used to hang on the strip. Federal agencies, excluding the Department of Defense, spend nearly $1.3 billion a year on office printing. Of these printing costs, $440.4 million a year are spent on errors and incorrect printing. Now, Thomas Jefferson said, never spend your money before you have it. Unfortunately, our government has got to the point where they budget money they don't have. He addresses this as well. I wish it were possible to obtain a single amendment to our Constitution, taking from the federal government the power of borrowing. Our government borrows all the money they use, which is unfortunate because that just pushes us deeper and deeper into debt. They don't seem to realize this, however, because they continue to spend. This is a humorous cartoon, but it shows how much the government is willing to do. And then as you see, you need to cut back, so we withheld the sprinkles. The people in our government, the rich people, in relation to Robin Hood, think by cutting a little bit, they're helping, but they're really not. So what can we do for our government to help them understand where our country's going in the future? I think we need to go to some basic budget training. The government needs to realize that you can't spend more than you make. If you continue to spend more than you make, you're going to run out of money. Marcus Tullius Cicero in 55 BC, almost 2,000 years ago, said the national budget must be balanced, the public debt must be reduced, the arrogance of the authorities must be moderated and controlled. Payments to foreign governments must be reduced. If the nation doesn't want to go bankrupt, people must again learn to work instead of living on public assistance. Now, a quote from 2,000 years ago is also very poignant today. We need to stand up. Remember, our government is of the people, by the people, for the people. Take charge and hold them accountable for how they use our money. And I think in doing so, we can get our country back on track.